O Sacrament most holy, O Sacrament divine, all praise and all thanksgiving be every moment thine. O Sacrament most holy, O Sacrament divine, all praise and all thanksgiving be every moment thine. O Sacrament most holy, O Sacrament divine, all praise and all thanksgiving be every moment thine. Greetings, dear brothers and sisters. This is Father Karabo Baloyi from the Archdiocese of Pretoria. I'm happy to share with you on our 7th day of the Novena as we prepare for the celebration of the solemnity of the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. 2 years ago at the symposium on ecumenism and interreligious dialogue, which was organized by the Sacbc conference at Lumko Institute, I was touched by what Dr. Ishmael Nuku, a Lutheran theologian who also participated in the drafting of the joint declaration on the doctrine of the justification between Catholics and Lutherans. He said something which deeply moved me. He mentioned that one of the benefits of ecumenical dialogue, it's not that we try to understand others and what they believe, but that it also becomes a moment of self-examination. He noted that one of the fruits of the dialogue between Catholics and Lutherans led the Lutherans themselves to examine their own theology on the Eucharist. And in particular, one of the questions they had to deal with, as Dr. Nuku described it, was to do with what do we do with the leftovers in inverted commas. He used that deliberately. What do we do with the leftovers? Referring to the hosts that remain during their service of Holy Communion, and what do they do with them? And this was influenced by the theology of the Catholic Church on the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. This is the faith of the Church, that Jesus is truly and really present in the Eucharist. When we look at the early Christian community, we realize that it was marked by the common life they lived and also by sharing. So we can summarize it as sharing. They shared life and resources together. They shared in the prayers, they prayed together. They shared in the teaching, they taught together, especially under the direction of the apostles. They shared the Eucharist together, they broke the bread together, and they shared their possessions so that none among them would be found lacking. And this sharing found in the early Christian community was also manifested in sharing the bread of life. Now, the early Christian community did not only share possessions together, but also shared the bread of life that they broke together in their common prayer. So Eucharistic adoration and devotion arose from this life of common living and common sharing. That the early Christian shared their life together and their resources. And what Dr. Nuku referred to as, what do we do with the leftovers? What do we do with the consecrated hosts that remain during the celebration of the Holy Eucharist? Right from the early church, They were reserved for the sick who could not participate in the community prayer and worship, and for the aged who could not come. So in some cases we find that while at the beginning those who were present would be allowed to take the consecrated host home for the sick and the aged who could not participate. And later on, when the church began being more and more organized, the Eucharist, the consecrated hosts that remained from the Eucharistic celebration, were reserved in the church, in the tabernacle. What we see right from the early church down to our days is that the Eucharist was treated with so much reverence. Why? Because the church believed and continues to believe that Jesus is truly and really present in the Eucharist. And this is why right from the beginning, the church treated the consecrated hosts or the consecrated bread that remained from the Eucharistic celebration with such reverence and utmost respect. The Eucharist was honored where it was reserved, and with the development of time, the places where the Eucharist was reserved, tabernacles and even altars on which the Eucharist was reserved, were decorated and treated with so much respect. Boiling down to the faith of the church, that Jesus is present in the Eucharist, that these are not just leftovers, if we would use that language, but that Jesus continues to be present in this species of bread that have been consecrated during common worship and prayer. That Jesus does not cease to be present in these when the Eucharistic prayer or the Eucharistic worship ceases. With the development of time, we see that the Eucharistic devotion, highlighting the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and giving honor to Jesus present in the Eucharist, began to develop through Eucharistic processions, through the celebration of the solemnity of the body and blood of Christ, which we are preparing to celebrate this coming Sunday, through Eucharistic congresses, either which were organized on a national level or in local parishes, in dioceses, or internationally, and other devotions that developed, like the 40 hours of Eucharistic adoration, perpetual adoration. And with perpetual adoration, we see it developing mostly in communities of consecrated men and women, especially those that were formed for the sole purpose of adoring Jesus present in the Eucharist and to promote devotion to Eucharistic adoration. With Vatican II and the renewal that took place, the Eucharist was highlighted very strongly as being a central point of our community life and worship. At Vatican II, Holy Mass was described or was defined as the worship of Christ within Mass, and Eucharistic adoration was defined as the worship of Christ outside of Mass. And this was now to elevate Eucharistic adoration and worship from the level of devotion to liturgy, that it became a liturgical celebration now, organized by the Church to highlight the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, but to give Jesus due honor and worship. In the document on the liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, paragraph 7, the Church proclaims Christ lives and is present in the Church. And among the ways the Council explained how is Christ present in the Church, highlighted the presence of Christ in a very special way through the species of bread and wine consecrated in the Eucharistic celebration. That this is the greatest way, the special way in which Christ is present among us, not undermining other forms of Christ's presence, but highlighting that this is a special form because Jesus is truly and really present among us through this species of bread and wine consecrated in the Eucharistic celebration. In Holy Mass, we celebrate Christ's presence. In adoration, the presence of Christ is prolonged outside the Eucharistic celebration. And this is highlighted by Benedict XVI in the Apostolic Exhortation Sacramentum Caritatis, paragraph 66, when he says that the act of adoration outside Mass prolongs and intensifies all that takes place during the liturgical celebration itself. Indeed, only in adoration can a profound and genuine reception mature. So Pope Benedict highlights then that Eucharistic worship, one of its benefits is to help us to develop a profound and genuine reception of Christ in the Eucharist. In the Apostolic Exhortation, Mane Nobiscum Domine, proclaimed for the year of the Eucharist from October 2004 to October 2005, St. John Paul II, in conclusion, highlighted the relationship between the Eucharistic sacrifice of the Mass and Eucharistic adoration. In paragraph 30 of the Apostolic Exhortation, Mane Nobiscum Domine, St. John Paul II addressed different members of the Church, and I would highlight only those where he brings an encouragement to maintain both the celebration of the Eucharist and Eucharistic adoration. To the priests, St. John Paul II encouraged them, "Dear priests, who repeat the words of consecration with each day and are witnesses and heralds of the great miracle of love which take place at your hands, be challenged by the grace of this special year. Celebrate Holy Mass each day with the same joy and fervor with which you celebrated your first Mass, and willingly spend time in prayer before the tabernacle." To the priests of the future, seminarians, St. John Paul II encouraged them. "In particular, I appeal to you, the priests of the future, during your time in the seminary, make every effort to experience the beauty not only of taking part daily in Holy Mass, but also of spending a certain amount of time in dialogue with the Eucharistic Lord." To the consecrated men and women, St. John Paul II encouraged them. Consecrated men and women, called by that very consecration to more prolonged contemplation, never forget that Jesus in the tabernacle wants you to be at his side, so that he can fill your hearts with the experience of his friendship, which alone gives meaning and fulfillment to your lives. Addressing young people whom he was expecting to meet at Cologne during the World Youth Day, St. John Paul II said to them, "I have great expectation of you, young people. As I look forward to our meeting at the next World Youth Day in Cologne, the theme of our meeting, 'We have come to worship him,' suggests how you can best experience this Eucharistic year. Bring to your encounter with Jesus, hidden in the Eucharist, all the enthusiasm of your age, all your hopes, all your desire to love." So the youth also encouraged to develop the love for the Holy Eucharist, but also for Eucharistic adoration, that in a special way, in Eucharistic adoration, they were to bring to the Lord their enthusiasm, their hopes, and all that they desire to love. And so all of us are encouraged while esteeming the Eucharistic sacrifice of the Holy Mass, to also love and appreciate spending time with the Lord in adoration, where we behold the Lord face to face, so that we may come to know the Lord more intimately and personally, and ultimately be completely transformed by contemplating the face